Hello, friends. We will be starting each lesson by first creating a new folder for the lesson, then creating a new scene in that folder of the same name. Double-click on a scene in the File System tab to open it. With multiple scenes open, we can switch between them by clicking their tabs in the preview dock. Today we'll discuss the differences between constants and variables using days as our frame of reference. So let's attach a new script to the root node of the scene and name it days. Let's start with constants, and declare one at the top of the script using the keyword const, followed by the name of our new constant, which is conventionally written in upper snake case. A constant is like a container where we can store information, but that information is never allowed to change. Something that we would consider to be a constant might be the number of days in the week. Since it can't be changed, it must be given a value immediately, which is why we have an error. We must follow the name with an equal sign, the assignment operator, to give the constant a value. The number of days in the week is 7. It is reasonable to assume that it will always be 7, and it is the same for everyone. Therefore, it should never need to change its value. Conversely, we have variables, which are also containers for storing information, but ones that are designed to be changed. We can declare a variable in the same way using the keyword var, then giving it a name, conventionally written in lower snake case. This makes it easy to see the difference between constants and variables in our scripts. Something that changes frequently might be the value of today. Unlike constants, variables are allowed to be empty. Let's override the ready function of our base node and print out the values of both the number of days in the week and today. We can see that the number of days in the week is 7, but the value of today is printed as null, which means empty or no value. Let's fix that by initializing today to be Thursday. And we can make our output more readable by adding some context, starting with something like today is, then leaving a space after is, a plus sign, then our variable. In this case, the plus sign is being used to append two pieces of a sentence together. If we try to do the same thing with our constant, however, it will cause an error, because our constant is a number, not a word. When we declared our constant, we assigned it a value of 7, which is a number without any decimal points, which in math is called an integer. So our constant has a type of integer. Today, on the other hand, was assigned a value of some characters wrapped in quotation marks. In programming, we call this a string. So our variable has a type of string. The plus operator can only be used when the types of both operands are compatible. We can get around this by using a built-in function to change the type as it is being used here to a string, passing the constant as an argument to the function. This will not change the type of the original constant, only how it is being used here within the context of the append operation. And we can continue adding more context after with another appended string as well, remembering to add an extra space at the front. So now we can print out our constant and variable using them in easy to understand sentences. After these lines, let's pretend a day passes. We can add extra context to our scripts that will never be seen by players, but only exists to help us as developers understand our own code, or code written by others. These are called comments, and are created using the octothorpe, #, or hashtag. Any text written after this symbol will be colored in gray and won't affect how the script runs in any way. They can be on their own lines or at the end of a line of code. So let's use a comment to explain that we are pretending that a day has passed between the code above this line and the code below. We'll change the value of today to be Friday, and print out another sentence. Today is plus today, which now holds a different value. We can see that the value of today was first printed as Thursday and then changed and is printed as Friday on the next line. The comment had no effect on the script being run. If we try to change the value of our constant, obviously this will cause an error because constants are not allowed to be changed. If we no longer want to use some lines of code in our script, we can easily change them to comments by highlighting them and pressing Ctrl-K or Command-K, adding the comment symbol at the front of every highlighted line. Pressing it again will remove the comments. We can specify the type of variable or constant by adding a colon after the name, followed by the type name we want to restrict this constant or variable to. So let's restrict our constant to be of type int and today of type string. Other than strings and integers, there are two other primitive types we can use to store basic information. If a number has decimal points, it is no longer an integer, and instead a different type called a floating point number, which uses the type name float. Let's add another variable for today's date and give it a type of floating point number with a value of 12.05, which is today's date, December 5th. And the last type is called Boolean, using the shortened name bool, which can either be true or false. So we'll add another variable for whether or not today is a holiday. I'll restrict this to be a Boolean, but I won't give it an initial value. Let's add two more print statements to print out the values of these variables with context. Today's date is plus date, and today is a holiday, plus is a holiday. When we run this now, we can see our date printed out, but is a holiday says false, despite not giving it a value. This is because all primitive types have a default value, but the default value can only be assigned if we specify the variable's type. Since we specified that is a holiday is a Boolean, it was assigned the default value for a Boolean, which is false. The default value for both an integer and a floating point number are both 0. And the default value for a string is just an empty string, which is not the same as null, but is a string with no characters in it. If we don't specify the type of a variable, its default value will be null, but it can be assigned a value of any type, and its type can change at any time. Let's remove the type from date, then give it a new value of December 13th, and print it out a second time. The variable starts out being assigned a value of a floating point number, gets used by the print statement, then assigned a string value before being printed out again. This is allowed because GDScript is a loosely typed language. This offers greater flexibility when writing our scripts, but also greater responsibility to avoid type compatibility errors like we saw with the plus operator. It is recommended that you always give your variables a type, not only to avoid errors, but also to improve the efficiency of running your scripts. If the engine knows the type of your variables, then it also knows exactly how much memory it needs to occupy. This also applies to using constants in place of variables. If the engine knows the value can't change, then it can be used more efficiently. In the next lesson, we'll learn about how to control the flow of our scripts. I'll see you in the next lesson.